fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The alarm screamed, a jagged chorus that rattled the metal ribs of the cruiser. My heart hammered in sync with the ship's trembling hull, each thud a reminder that the universe was holding its breath. Eris Thorn's grip on my wrist was iron cold, his thumb tracing a slow, deliberate line down my forearm, the contact sending a shiver of heat through my veins. "We have seconds, Alara," he hissed, his voice a low growl that vibrated against my cheek. The violet nebula outside the viewport pulsed like a wounded beast, its tendrils licking the darkness. I could taste the metallic tang of ionized air on my tongue, feel the electric charge crackling between us, an invisible current that made my skin prickle. I swallowed the bitter coffee that had been cooling in my hand, its warmth a feeble comfort against the cold fire of his stare. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, though the words felt like a promise. He pressed his lips to the hollow of my throat, a breath-soft kiss that tasted of midnight metal and forbidden longing. "I need you to fire the quantum core, to channel the storm we've chased for years. It will either save the galaxy or consume us both in a blaze of pure desire." The control panel glowed, a lattice of sapphire light that mirrored the storm raging in my chest. My fingers hovered over the activation switch, trembling with the weight of a decision that could end worlds or ignite a love that defied the void. I could feel the heat of his hand on my wrist, the heat of his body pressing against mine, the heat of the core humming beneath the floor, each a different kind of fire. A surge of raw power surged through the ship as I pressed the button. The quantum core erupted, a blinding flash that painted the cockpit in violet and gold. Eris's eyes widened, then softened, his lips parting in a gasp that was half awe, half hunger. "You chose us," he breathed, his hand sliding to cup the back of my neck, his thumb brushing the soft curve of my jaw. The world outside dissolved into a cascade of stars, the nebula's tendrils wrapping around us like silk. In that instant, the galaxy's fate and our own intertwined, a tapestry of fire and longing that would never be the same. When the light faded, we were still there, breathing, trembling, alive. The ship steadied, the alarms fell silent, and the only sound left was the steady thrum of our hearts, beating in a rhythm that echoed the pulse of the universe itself. I turned to Eris, his gaze still burning with violet fire, and whispered, "We survived, but the real battle has just begun." He smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips, and pulled me close, his body a shield against the cold vacuum beyond. "Then let's make the stars jealous," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear, as we surrendered to the heat of the moment and the promise of a future forged in both flame and love. The afterglow of the core's discharge lingered like a perfume in the air, a mixture of ozone, burnt copper, and something sweeter, perhaps the faint scent of Eris's cologne, a blend of night-blooming jasmine and distant suns. I pressed my forehead against his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breath, each inhalation a reminder that we were still alive, still together. "What now?" I asked, my voice steadier now, the tremor gone from my hands. He tilted his head, his dark eyes scanning the instrument readouts that flickered back to life. "We need to plot a course out of the nebula before the residual energy destabilizes the hull. The core's discharge has left a scar in the fabric of space-time. If we linger, we could be ripped apart." "And the fleet," I pressed, thinking of the Alliance ships that were supposed to rendezvous with us at the edge of the nebula. Their fate hung on this fragile moment. "They'll be fine," Eris said, his tone softening. "I've already sent a beacon. The quantum echo will guide them, but we have to be the first to break through." I felt a surge of pride mixed with dread. The weight of command settled on my shoulders like a mantle of starlight. I had trained for this, strategic simulations, emergency protocols, endless drills, but nothing had prepared me for the taste of fear that lingered on my tongue when the universe threatened to swallow us whole. "All right," I said, my voice firm, "let's get this ship moving." We moved as a single organism, each motion synchronized, each breath a shared rhythm. Eris slipped his hand into mine, fingers interlacing, and together we pulled the lever that engaged the auxiliary thrusters. The ship shuddered, a low growl resonating through the metal, and then surged forward, cutting through the violet haze like a blade through silk. Outside, the nebula's tendrils writhed, their colors shifting from deep indigo to electric teal. Sparks of ionized particles danced across the viewport, painting fleeting constellations that seemed to whisper ancient names. I could hear the faint hum of the ship's engines, a song of power that matched the thudding of my heart. You remember the first time we met? Eris asked, his voice barely audible over the roar of the thrusters. I smiled despite the danger. In the docking bay of Vesper Station, you were arguing with Commander Rhea about the ethics of using the chrono lattice on civilian vessels. You looked like a storm about to break. And you were the one who calmly suggested a compromise, he replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. I laughed, a short, breathy sound. I always liked a good challenge. He squeezed my hand, and for a heartbeat the universe seemed to pause, the nebula's glow dimming as if to listen. You've always been the one who sees the patterns, he said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. The way you can read the stars, the way you can read people. I never thought I'd be the one who needed saving. And I never thought I'd be the one who'd have to fire a quantum core to keep you alive, I replied, the memory of the blinding flash still vivid. We shared a laugh, a sound that echoed in the cramped cockpit, then turned our attention back to the controls. The ship's navigation system flickered, displaying a narrow corridor of relatively stable space, a corridor we had to thread through before the nebula's turbulence grew too violent. I plotted the course, my fingers dancing over the holomap, each tap a promise to the universe that we would not falter. The corridor was a thin line of calm amidst chaos, a path that required precision and trust. Steady, Eris whispered, his eyes never leaving the readouts. We're almost there. The ship responded, the thrusters humming in perfect harmony with the quantum field that still pulsed beneath the floor. I could feel the residual energy like a low-frequency vibration in my bones, a reminder that the core's power was not yet fully spent. Suddenly, a warning chime cut through the quiet. Structural integrity compromised, the ship announced in a flat, mechanical voice. My breath caught. Eris, we've got a breach in the forward hull. He slammed his palm onto the emergency panel, rerouting power to the shield generators. A cascade of blue light flooded the cockpit, forming a shimmering barrier that pulsed in time with the ship's heartbeat. Hold on, he said, his voice a mix of command and reassurance. I've got us. I watched as the shield held, the violet tendrils of the nebula striking the barrier and scattering like fireworks against a night sky. Each impact sent a shiver through the ship, but the shield held firm. We're losing power, I reported, glancing at the dwindling energy meters. Eris's jaw tightened. Divert the auxiliary reactors. We can't afford to lose the core's residual charge. I rerouted the flow, feeling the ship's systems groan under the strain. The lights dimmed, then flared back to a soft amber as the power stabilized. There, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. We're back on track. The corridor ahead opened, a tunnel of calm space that seemed to stretch infinitely. Stars glimmered on either side, their light a promise of safety beyond the nebula's grasp. We made it, I whispered, relief flooding my voice. Eris leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. We always do, he murmured, because we're stronger together than we ever were apart. The ship glided through the corridor, the alarms finally silencing as the last tremors faded. Outside, the violet nebula receded, its tendrils retreating like a wounded animal pulling back into the darkness. We emerged into open space, the blackness punctuated by distant suns and the glittering ribbon of the Milky Way. The stars seemed brighter, as if they were celebrating our survival. Look, Eris said, pointing toward a cluster of luminous points. That's the Orion Gate, we're almost home. I stared at the gate, its golden arches shimmering with ancient energy. It had been a legend among pilots, a gateway that could transport a ship across light years in an instant, but only if the vessel's core was pure and the pilot's heart true. We have a chance to use it, I said, feeling the weight of destiny settle on my shoulders. If we can stabilize the core, we could jump straight to the Alliance fleet. And end this war before it even begins, Eris added, his eyes alight with a fierce determination. The thought of ending the war, of sparing countless lives, filled me with a fierce, protective fire. I thought of the children on the fringe colonies, the families waiting for their loved ones to return, the countless stories that would never be told if the conflict continued. We have to try, I said, my voice steady. We owe it to everyone out there. Eris nodded, his hand finding mine once more. Then let's do it. We descended into the heart of the Orion Gate, the ship's hull humming as the ancient energy resonated with the quantum core. The air crackled, and for a moment I felt the universe hold its breath once again. I placed my hand on the core's containment field, feeling the faint pulse of residual power. It was like holding a living heart, fragile yet full of potential. "Ready?" Aris asked, his voice barely a whisper. I closed my eyes, inhaling the scent of ionized air, the faint perfume of his skin, the metallic tang of the ship's interior. I let the memory of the nebula's violet fire wash over me, turning fear into resolve. "Ready," I answered, opening my eyes to the swirling vortex of the gate. The core surged, a wave of pure energy that surged through the ship's conduits, lighting up every panel, every conduit, every fiber of the cruiser. The Orion Gate responded, its arches glowing brighter, the ancient symbols etched into its surface pulsing in rhythm with our hearts. A blinding flash enveloped us, and for an instant there was nothing, no sound, no light, just the sensation of being stretched across the fabric of reality. When the light receded, we found ourselves in a quiet sector of space, the Alliance fleet glimmering like a constellation of silver ships. The flagship, the Aegis, floated majestically, its hull reflecting the distant suns. Aris let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like an eternity. "We made it," he said, his voice trembling with awe. I stepped out of the cruiser, the hatch hissing open, and felt the cool vacuum of space give way to the warm, breathable air of the Aegis docking bay. The crew rushed toward us, their faces a mixture of relief and astonishment. "Captain Thorne," shouted a senior officer, his eyes wide, "you've returned." Aris turned to me, his gaze soft but fierce. "Alara, you saved us all." I smiled, feeling the weight of the moment settle into a gentle hum in my chest. "We saved each other," I replied, my hand finding his once more. The commander approached, his uniform immaculate, his badge glinting. The quantum core's discharge was recorded across the sector. The nebula's destabilization has been halted. The Alliance will be able to negotiate peace with the Xarian Confederacy. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. I could see the hope flickering in their eyes, the same hope that had ignited within me when I first stepped onto the cruiser, when I first felt Aris's hand on my wrist. "What about the core?" I asked, turning to Aris. "Is it still stable?" He glanced at the console, the readouts now steady. "It's stable for now. We'll need to recalibrate, but we have time. The real work begins now, rebuilding, healing, forging a new future." I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming surge of gratitude. The universe had tested us, torn us apart, and then stitched us back together with threads of fire and love. Aris brushed the tear away with his thumb, his touch gentle. "We've been through the storm, Alara. Now we get to watch the sunrise." I leaned into his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the same rhythm that had echoed through the nebula, through the quantum core, through every moment of terror and triumph. The commander placed a hand on my shoulder. "You both have earned a place in the annals of history. The galaxy will remember this day as the turning point." I glanced at Aris, his eyes reflecting the distant stars, his smile a promise of countless tomorrows. "Then let's make sure it's a story worth telling," I said, my voice firm. He pulled me close, his lips brushing my ear. "We'll write it together, one star at a time." As the crowd celebrated around us, I felt the universe expand, its possibilities endless. The violet nebula was now a memory, a scar that glowed faintly behind us, a reminder of how close we had come to oblivion. But in that glow, I also saw the promise of new constellations, of love that could survive the darkest storms. And as Aris's hand tightened around mine, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether they be battles of war, whispers of politics, or the quiet doubts that linger in the night, we would face them side by side. The stars above us seemed to pulse in approval, their ancient light weaving a tapestry of destiny that stretched across the cosmos. And in that moment, I whispered to the universe, to the stars, to the very fabric of existence. We survived, we love, and we will keep fighting for each other, for the galaxy, for the future we will build together. The night sky stretched infinitely, and I felt for the first time in a long while that I was exactly where I was meant to be, standing on the edge of eternity, hand in hand with the man who had become my anchor, my fire, my everything.